Closers are losers. Welcome to the show, Johnny Custer. We got a special guest today. I've been wanting to interview this guy for actually several months now. He's just hard to get a hold of. He is a busy guy. So Johnny comes from the medical device industry. He now recently has started his own distributorship, and his company contracts with manufacturers to sell their different products line in specific territories that they own. So he started in the industry working for Zimmer, which became Zimmer Biomet. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. And then went to Conformis before becoming an independent distributor on his own. So post-college, he worked in Washington, D.C. as a lobbyist. Folks, you do have to have persuasion and sales for that. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And he did that, according to what he told me, before he realized he didn't want to sell his own soul. And he got into the medical sales industry. He's got a dual degree from Towson University in Maryland, communication and mass communication with a focus on public relations and rhetoric. Johnny Custer, that is an impressive resume, far more impressive than mine. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, I'm great, Jeremy. Thanks for having me here. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and your guests. And congratulations on the new podcast as well. Excited to see that you're out here doing this, man.
Yeah, we're just here to throw some rocks in the glass. So let's do this. And like I said, I've been wanting to get you on here. You are a seven-figure earner as a 1099 salesperson before you started your own distributorship. So that is impressive, my friend. And we've known each other for the last 3 years. You've went through a lot of our training courses. So very impressed. So let's do this. Before we dive into some questions that I've written out here for you, can you tell our listeners maybe a little bit more about really how you got started in sales and how you got all these skills? Like, how did you get so dang good?
So we'll take it back, I guess, like to the beginning phase of my life. To me, everything's always been some sort of sales, right? Yeah. We've always been trying to persuade people to our way of thinking our entire life. And it's all a sale. When I was 5 or 6 years old, my mom's biggest goal in life was to get me to go to college because she never went. And her boss said to her when she was saying, my son's going to go to college come hell or high water, he said, what are you going to do when he realizes he doesn't need a college degree to be a sales guy? Because he's a sales guy. I can tell just from talking to him as a 6-year-old. Now, times have changed. Obviously, we need college degrees. And I did end up going to that field. And this guy's still a family friend and laughs all the time about the fact that I'm in sales and doing so well. But to me, sales was always kind of the way to go because it allows you to control your own income. Because if you're good, you can go out and you can make more money. You're not set by a salary. I saw my parents set by salaries and they did pretty well in their life. But they knew what their income was based on what somebody else was dictating for them, not what they were dictating for themselves. And it always appealed to me more to go out and take a risk and try and generate my own income and not get what somebody else was setting forward to me. My first job was as a paper boy, and that was more than just delivering papers. I was selling subscriptions door to door. So I would have to knock on people's doors who were not subscribers to the paper, and I'd have to sell them subscriptions. And that was my first gig. And then after that, it was kind of the typical course of people. I did retail sales in high school, shoes, sold cell phones, did the same thing in college, also bartended, which a little bit of sales too. You know, you've got to be able to listen to people.
You've practically been in sales pretty much your whole life. Then you got into lobbying and stuff, and then you got into the medical device industry, which I know a lot about. We train a lot of companies as well. That's how we started training you like 3-4 years ago. What type of products do you sell in the medical device industry? People want to know these things because it's not every day that someone is a 1099 salesperson and makes $1 million a year in commissions. That's not everybody does that. So people are going to want to know, like, and we're going to get into it, like things you do that set you apart to be able to do that compared to other salespeople. But what do you sell specifically in the medical device industry?
Sure. That's probably a pretty important question to ask here. So we specialize in total joint replacement, knee, hip, shoulder. Specifically, and then sports medicine products, like when you hear of athletes tearing their ACL or tearing the rotator cuff, the medical products that are used in those surgeries to stabilize their ligaments on the sports medicine side, we sell those. And then we also sell hand, wrist, and foot and ankle reconstruction products. So
Okay.
if somebody were to injure themselves pretty significantly, their hand or their foot
Yeah.
and ankle, the products that kind of put those pieces back together, for lack of a better term.
That makes sense. So here's what I did. I wrote out a few questions here that I know our listeners wanted to ask you. I did like a survey on this. They wanted to know like some things in your sales process and how you got to the next level. So the first question I've got for you is, what do you think is the most pervasive issue when it comes to sales in our time? What do you think that is?
I think people having poor communication skills is probably the biggest problem that we have. And a lot of that comes from bad training and bad coaching at other places. People trying to sell the way that they think somebody should be selling because Alec Baldwin gave an always be closing speech in a silly movie or something like that.
Right.
And it creates an inherent distrust of salespeople in the world. And a lot of times our battle isn't to get people to buy our product. It's to get people to not have resistance to us even existing in their world.
Yeah.
And if we don't know how to talk to clients, potential clients that we're going to be providing advice and strategic assistance to, we're going to lose sales as sales professionals. And that to me is the biggest issue.
It is poor communications. And you know this just as well as I do, because you learned a lot of this from going through the training here. But most salespeople in our day and age are still what we call product pushers. Product pushers, right? They do what? They start talking to a prospect. It doesn't matter what you're selling, whether it's medical device equipment or insurance, real estate, financial service, cars, doesn't matter, any industry. And they ask a few logical based questions, and then they do what? They go right into their solution, talking about how they have the best this and the best this, and they talk about features and benefits. It's like they hope and pray that something they're going to say is going to trigger that person just to magically want to buy from them. And I call that hopium because it's a drug that so many salespeople and companies are on, where they literally hope and pray that if they just spew out a bunch of great stuff about their company, that magically the person is going to be like, oh my gosh, it's so awesome too, I want to buy. And because of that, because of those communication skills, it causes the prospect to literally run the other way. And if you do make a sale, they commoditize you, right? And they lower you down on price, and your company loses profits, you lose profits, you lose sales. And it's just like a rampant disease that goes around that people can't figure out why that's happening to them. Make sense?
Absolutely agree. It's a cascading effect. I call it like the sales feedback loop from hell. People get in there and they do exactly what you're describing. They're waiting for the client or potential client to say something that just allows them to go into their pitch. It just allows them to go say whatever it is that they're pre-programmed to say, that they think or their company has told them is the solution to this problem or these sets of problems that X number of clients have in our industry. And a lot of times they're not really the problems that the client has, or they're not a significant enough problem that it's going to make their client change their direction or their opinion on what they're using or where they're going.
Sure.
And these people don't listen to find the real key to open the door that they need.
They don't listen to find out what the real problem is and how the problem's affecting them and what caused the problem, because they don't listen to know really what are the right questions asked to bring out that emotion. Makes sense. Now, so I wanted to ask you this. We don't talk a lot about this, but it's something that salespeople have been asking me a lot lately with the whole coronavirus going on. What warning do you have for salespeople that can help them really avoid some disasters in the future? Like, what advice do you have for salespeople to kind of stop them from having disasters?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things people can do is they can keep their pipeline full and know their industry and know their targets. But the other thing that they need to do is they need to be effectively using their time. And you need to lean into your training and your coaching opportunities in times like these now, because there's going to be a lot of downtime. And if you spend it catching up on Stranger Things or something on Netflix, and that's all you're doing, I'm not saying that that's not okay. Everybody needs to decompress their brain, right? I mean, I watched some shows last night with my wife.
Yeah.
But during the day, when you would be making sales calls, when you would be doing things, you need to be training to get better. I always tell people that work with me, we're orthopedic athletes.
Yeah.
And this is a sudden off season. We need to be training in the off season. Athletes train in the off season so they're ready for the season. And they need to lean into training and be ready to go.
100%.
It's going to turn back on.
Like this is going to last forever. Maybe a month, 6 weeks. Let's say worst case scenario, a couple months, but business will go back to normal. People still have problems. They need solutions. So if we're just sitting around watching TV all day, you can't even go to the gym right now in some states. But if you're just sitting around watching TV all day and you're not continuously improving, how does anything change for you when you start going back into there? Because you're going to have to catch up, right? People have problems. Companies have problems. You have solutions to solve those. And one of the things we always train companies and salespeople on is really the way you avoid disaster is stop, and you hit on it a minute ago, is you stop using dinosaur sales techniques from the stone ages of selling. I cannot preach it enough. Just like this one thing that always irks me. Sales trainers will be like, you got to be really excited about what you sell and just tell them how great it is. And they're going to get enthusiastic and excited too. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. If you study human behavior and persuasion, you know that triggers the reverse effect. Because what happens when you walk onto a car dealership or you go into Best Buy or you go somewhere to look at something and the salesperson comes up and is really excited that you're there and is like, we've got the best deal, we've got the best this, we've got the best that, and we're going to get you into this today. What do most people do? They do one of two things. If you have an A-type personality, you're typically going to throw out a ton of objections and you're going to shut down the salesperson and reject what they're offering. If you're more of a passive personality, which are most people, you're going to say, that looks great. Can you give me some information? I need to talk to my spouse. Can you call me back in a week, a month, a year later? And when you call that person, magically, they don't answer and they don't return your text messages or your phone calls or your emails. They go into witness protection mode is what I call it.
Sure.
So lowering your enthusiasm, keeping it on the inside. Be excited about what you sell, your solutions, but keep that to yourself and be more neutral. Become what we call a problem finder and problem solver rather than a product pusher. Now, I wanted to ask you this as well. What was the one thing that you really had to change to get to the top? This was a big question that a lot of my listeners sent in. What was the one thing you really had to change in your sales process to become literally a 7-figure earner? We're not talking about Johnny just sells 7 figures worth of sales. He actually makes 7 figures a year as a 1099 salesperson for his company. What was the biggest thing you had to change?
Really, for me, it was letting go of the outcome of the sales process and detaching myself from that outcome. I'm a bit of a type A personality, like you were just describing. We tend to want to influence and control things all the way through and dictate the conversations. I sell to a lot of doctors, and surprise, surprise, a lot of them are A-type personalities as well. So it can kind of become this battle of attrition between personality types to prove the other person correct or incorrect.
Sure.
When that does nothing for you. I mean, it absolutely, it burns you to the ground. And I had to let go of that part of my personality a bit. And I also had to let go of trying to impress the people above me when I was working for companies. I was trying really hard to, now I will say commit business, but at the time I used to call it closing business.
Sure.
I would try really hard to do that because I wanted to succeed rapidly and be the best as quickly as I possibly could. And when I just realized if I took that always be closing mindset out of the equation, acted more like who I was as a human being, and was real and direct with my clients about what I could and couldn't do or what we could and couldn't provide, that detached me from the sale and it helped me significantly in getting to the next level.
Well, it opens up your prospect, because if they view you as somebody that's there to see if you can actually help them, rather than how most prospects view a salesperson, and that's that they're there to try to stuff their solution down their throat, they become open to you when you are open to them. It's the same thing we talk about in the training is you're detaching yourselves from the expectations of making the sale, and instead you're focused on whether or not you can actually solve that person's problem. Can you actually help them solve their problem? And when they feel that from you, they open up to you. That's how trust is gained. So rather than using old school sales techniques that work against human behavior, that create resistance, that create walls, that create objections, what we're learning here, what we're teaching, what you know, is how to use human behavior in the sales process to your advantage, where they're pulling you in rather than you pushing them and they're pushing back. And that's key if you want to make $300,000 a year as a salesperson, $500,000, or even $1 million a year in commissions like you do, Johnny. That is massively important. Now, how do salespeople stand out in the market? Like what are a few things that you do that help you stand out in the market? Because it's not like you're the only medical device salesperson selling that type of product line, right?
No. I mean, there's tons, and I sell for some smaller companies. I mean, we're going up against companies like Stryker that do $13.5 billion a year in sales. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely not the only person in my market. And, one of the things that I do is what we just talked about, right? I'm there to see if I can even solve a problem for my clients.
Yeah.
I'm not there to sell them my solution because I think it's the best.
Yeah.
I'm there to find out whether or not I have a solution that fits into their problems, mm-hmm. or if they even realize that some of the things that they're doing or using right now are creating problems for them.
Sure.
And sometimes I don't have a solution for them, or sometimes they don't need the solution I have or the solutions I have, or they may not be the correct client. The timing may be off. And I recognize that, and I tell them, this might not be the right time for us.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny when you do that. It sounds counterintuitive, but it almost becomes magnetic. Then they start trying to find reasons why it is the right thing for them to work with you.
Because you're not acting needy. You're
right.
acting, like I said, you've become what we call a problem finder and problem solver. In our day and age, it's not enough to just be good at problem solving. In our day and age, you have to be even better at problem finding. Now, what does that mean? That means asking the right questions at the right time in the conversation that allows that person to surface what their problems really are. Because when you first talk to a prospect, most of them don't realize that they even have a problem, right? Unless they've reached out to you. Or maybe they do realize they have a problem, but they don't realize how bad the problem is. Or maybe they don't have a problem, but what are the consequences down the road if they don't do anything now? And so without asking them the right questions that allow them to think differently because they've never thought about that, it's impossible for them to buy from you so you can actually solve their problems. So in our day and age, if you want to be a top earner like Johnny is, make $500,000 a year, $1 million a year of income as a sales rep, you have to become excellent at problem finding first and foremost. Now, I wanted to ask you this question as well. We've got a few more questions that everybody wanted to know. And this is a big topic right now with the coronavirus. What are you doing right now with the coronavirus going on? Are you just hanging out in your pajamas, sucking your thumb, watching Netflix, crying all day? Like, what are you running around in circles around your house to stay in shape? Like, what are you doing as a salesperson where you've got this downtime maybe for the next 30 days?
Well, I'm doing a bunch of things. One is I'm anticipating what's going to be coming when the business in my industry turns back on, right? We have to look at that sort of thing. And it doesn't matter that I'm in medical sales and that maybe somebody's selling solar panels or somebody's selling anything else.
Yeah.
The economy is kind of grinding to a halt right now, but it's going to pick back up, and there's going to be a flood of business entering back into the market. And it's going to be to a point where a lot of people aren't able to handle the capacity. So what I'm doing, one, is planning what things are going to look like in that restart window. We don't know when it is, but what's certainly going to happen, especially in my industry, is these people who need their knees and their hips replaced that have canceled surgeries right now, they're not getting their knee or their hip done anywhere else because no one's doing it. Right. So they're going to come back on along with the normal flow. So I'm thinking to myself, what in my arsenal of products that I have are going to help these surgeons get these surgeries done faster. One, and this is kind of nuanced and specific to my industry, but single-use disposable instruments so they don't have to be reprocessed. We could do more surgeries in a day and do them faster.
Yeah.
So start having conversations with my clients about what their surgery schedule is going to look like. Then on top of that, I'm dedicating several hours a day to rereading the training that I started doing with you years ago, Jeremy, and doing some of the new stuff that you have on your Lightspeed platform and all that, because I've got downtime right now during the day. And if my skills aren't sharp when I get back out in the field, I'm going to get eaten up just by the sheer volume of wave of things coming in, not the other sales reps that are going to be better prepared than I am or things like that. It's going to be all of the other external factors that I'm not prepared for. I'm not ready to go with.
So you're taking a challenge, a problem that everybody has right now, and you're looking for solutions around that. Because you're right, the economy, it's not like it's going to be like this a year from now or anything like that.
Right.
You're talking 30, 45 days or so, maybe less. It depends on what happened. But the economy's going to come back. Jobs will be back. People will need knee emplacements. They're going to need other products and services that salespeople still sell. So what we always talk about in our training is training something that you did, or is training something that you do? I want you to think about that for a second. Is training something you did, or is it something that you do? Think about the top people in any profession. Do they continually improve and train? Or do they just get trained once and that's it? They're good. No. Think about golf. Think about Tiger Woods, greatest golfer of all time, arguably one of the greatest. Has a trainer, a hitting coach, still learning how to improve. Think about LeBron James, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan. When they were playing, LeBron's still playing, always getting trained. Personal trainers, always improving. You think about the top salespeople in the world, always improving. I'm a sales trainer. We train a lot of companies, both big, small, medium size. I still read 3 books on sales every single month. That's 36 books a year, let alone all of my training products and our books that we have for our clients and students. Because we know that if you're not improving, you're digressing. It's just the way the ballgame is. So if you've got the next 30 days, dive into training. So when the economy comes back, when your customers come back, because they will, you're prepared, and you're better prepared than other salespeople who are sitting around watching Netflix all day, doing nothing with their time, because you can make a ton of money if you learn the right skills and the right questions to ask. When everything comes back to normal here in the next month or two, you can make a ton of money compared to other salespeople who are not preparing for that. What are your thoughts on that?
That is dead on accurate. And the analogy to athletes that you used is one that I use quite frequently because I'm a broken down retired athlete at this point. So it's easy for me to make athletic references. But I've used Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant in descriptions all the time because the stories of their adherence to a training regimen are legendary. I mean, they're absolutely legendary amongst athletes and coaches. I'm fortunate enough to know some high-level coaches in the athletic field that have actually worked with both Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. And part of the reason why I've met these people is because the success I've had in the sales field has opened me up to meeting some of these higher level folks. I mean, it's not just money that I'm making connections with networks of people that I never would have met previous to this. Yeah. And I mean, the stories of their mental acuity, fortitude, and focus are unbelievable. Yeah. And I use those stories as fuel and motivation for myself, because I'm not going to sit here and say there aren't times when, my mind wanders and I could get distracted too. But then I think to myself, what would these guys do at the top of their field? They'd hunker down. And right now, this 30, 45, 60-day layoff, this is the best time to learn new skills that you may not be familiar with, because you can practice in a consequence-free environment 100%. And you're not learning on the job. That's the most expensive mistake people make, is learning on the job, not learning from somebody else's mistakes, my mistakes, Jeremy, your mistakes, the content that you put out. You're very open about talking to how you changed your sales process to get here. People don't learn from that. Yeah. They're going to be up a creek when it comes back time to get to work. Yeah. Now is the time to practice and learn.
100%. What was the biggest difference? So you started going through NEPQ, neuro-emotional persuasion question training here with us, maybe 3.5 years ago, something like that when we first launched. What was the biggest difference? What was the biggest difference for you once you started applying NEPQ in your sales process compared to how you used to sell before? I know your results were huge, like 10 times, but what do you think the big difference for you was?
Really the relationships that were being built with the clients in addition to just the sales stuff, because up to that point I was doing okay, right? I mean, by most people's standards, I was doing pretty well, but most of the sales felt transactional. Most of the relationships were not as strong as they are now.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that my clients didn't trust me, but I was just one of the many Zimmer reps, Stryker reps, all those guys out there. I didn't stand out on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
I did in moments,
Yeah.
right? Because my personality that is more geared towards portions of my personality, anyway, that are more geared towards the style of NEPQ,
Sure.
would shine through at times because it's kind of the way that it was ingrained in me that how I should have been just from how I grew up and things like that versus what was trained out of me by bad sales training.
Right.
So those relationships tended to grow out more as I bought more into this training and clients trusted me more and knew that I was there as an advisor to them.
Yeah.
And there were plenty of times where I said, look, don't use my stuff here. This isn't the right thing for you now. Right. And we would maybe lose a case, but we get 10 more in the future because they'd be like, you know what, I can call John and he's going to shoot me straight.
You know why? Because they viewed you as the trusted authority with what you're offering. All the other salespeople competing for that business, you know how they viewed them? Just another salesperson trying to sell them something. So even though you might have said, hey, based on what you've told me, what we're doing here is it would not work for what you're looking for your patients. When you're that open with them and honest, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, okay, I understand, but how can I work with it? They're going to try to how can we make this possible? Because they're not used to that from salespeople. They're used to just throwing out objections because they keep pushing and getting rid of you. When you're the trusted authority, and you ask what we call our committing questions at the end of that conversation, and you've had that dialogue throughout, it creates urgency in their mind to want to buy now, not later. So it moves up your sales cycle, especially if you're in a complex selling environment like you are in medical device sales.
Sure.
But because of that trust, when another rep comes around trying to steal your account, what do? They don't leave.
They're not successful. I have a lot of people that I work with and they're amazed at how much I don't care when a rep from one of the companies I used to work for previously or one of the big competitors, DePuy, which is owned by Johnson & Johnson, Stryker, when they come sniffing around, everybody is like, oh my gosh, so-and-so was talking to your doctor. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to keep going about my business. I mean, they can take my doctor out to dinner if they want because they're not going to get a better package of product and service. And then we're going to provide because we know how to provide it. Right.
Well, and your doctor's emotionally bought in to you helping them solve their problems. And because other salespeople don't know how to communicate that way, haven't learned those skills, they can't emotionally buy into that. So it's hard for them to ever leave. All right. So what do you think? I had a couple more questions here. What do you think the biggest difference is in between selling 10 to 20 years ago compared to selling in our day, like now?
Well, for one, customers have more information, right? Especially customers that I'm dealing with because doctors are brilliant. I mean, every client I have 100 times smarter than I am. I mean, there's no question about it, right? They're more educated. They're better trained. They're more well-read on medical journals, medical papers. I mean, these guys have information and understanding to do things that I could never fathom being that brilliant, right? I mean, and that trickles down to a lot of other segments of society. I mean, customers are just much more informed now. You can go in and Google search anything and get all the information you need as a customer to make a buying decision before a salesperson even approaches you on, say, the car lot or in the appliance section of wherever it is that you're going to buy the thing.
Yep.
And that is probably the biggest difference. I mean, clients are more informed. They don't want to be pushed products. And a lot of times, if we're informed customers, we know if the person's just pushing a product to us, because sometimes we know more about it than the salespeople do.
Yeah, you're exactly right. 20 plus years ago, consumers, before the rise of social media and the internet, they relied on you, the salesperson, to educate them about the products and services. That's what they were like. That's why they might have picked up the phone for a cold call. They might have picked up the phone. Now they don't, okay? The company would send out the salesperson to educate the public about what they sold. And really, besides TV and radio, that was the primary, maybe newspapers, that was primarily the way people would learn about what you offer. But in our day and age, like you hit it on the head with the power of the internet, technology, especially social media, we live in a whole different ballgame. Because like you said, the consumer already knows about your company. They know about your products, your services. They know your pricing. They know who your competitors are. They know how long you've been in business. They know all of that by simply doing a Google search on their freaking smartphone. And because of that power, they'll no longer be manipulated or pressured by pushy salespeople, especially in a complex selling environment like you're in, because they know they have many choices to choose the exact product or service that you sell. So that's why we have to, we talked about this earlier, we have to learn sales techniques and the right questions that work with human behavior rather than using these old school techniques, i.e. a model of selling ABCs of closing that 20, 30 years ago when the consumer was different, worked a little bit. But in our day and age, like, unless you want to just call hundreds of leads to make a few sales, well, you're just going to have to work your butt off to make any income at all. And who wants to work 14 hours a day to just barely get by? I think it's just crazy. Why do you think most sales are lost by a salesperson?
That's a multifaceted question, but it still goes back to training. I mean, people lose sales because they don't know how to communicate with their customers outside of the script that they were given or the features and benefits that their company told them is the reason why people are going to buy this. I think that's a huge portion of why sales are lost. I think sales are lost also because people don't know how to follow up with a client, right? They make assumptive follow-ups and they don't ask the client if they're open to even taking the next step. They don't know how to round back on clients that maybe before they started doing something like NEPQ and really learned how to communicate with people, they blew a sales call with somebody. They don't know how to go back to that person 6, 12, 18 months later and call on them again. They don't have the appropriate skills to sell in a complex environment or even an uncomplex environment, even a simple environment. There's not enough plays in their playbook.
It's their skill level 100%. I don't buy into this. I always hear like, oh, well, they're just not working hard enough. When I'm in events training and I'm in an audience and I'm speaking, I always ask these couple questions. I say, all right, everybody in the room, raise your hand if your prospects that you talk to have problems. Raise your hand. Everybody raises their hand. And I'm like, okay, I want you to write down the 2 biggest problems that your prospects have. Take 1 minute, write down your 2 biggest problems that your prospects have. They write that down. Now then I say, look at those 2 problems that you just wrote down. Raise your hand if your solution solves those. Guess what? Everybody raises their hands. So what I think I heard all of you say is your prospects have problems. You have a solution to solve those. So if your prospects have problems, you have a solution to solve those. Why are they not buying from you? What's the missing link? And I just pause for about 5 seconds to let that sink in. And then I say, can I make a suggestion to you? Could it be that what you are saying to your prospects, or more importantly, not asking, is causing your prospects to not buy your solution and run the other way, and you can't solve their problems if they never buy from you? So once you learn the right things to say, and you learn, more importantly, the right questions to ask in your sales conversations, what becomes possible for you in sales? And it's like a light bulb goes off in their mind that, wow, I could make a lot more sales if I learned how to sell the right way. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. Sometimes it marvels me that people don't realize that they are the ones causing the prospect to not buy from them because they don't know how to communicate the right way. It's insane.
It's 100% accurate. I mean, it's people get in their own way more than they realize, and it's not a lot of times, I mean, most of the time, it's not the product.
Yeah,
it's not the lack of revenue or resources for the company they're selling to. It's hold a mirror up. It's you, and it's how you're communicating with your clients, with the people that are around you, with their network of people that are gatekeeping for them. All of it. I mean, if you can't communicate with all those people,
you're done. And it's true. I saw I saw a sales trainer post an ad the other day, and I'm like, what is he talking about? And he's like, the most important thing for a salesperson to be the top at sales is his belief. It's not his skills. It's just if he believes in the product. And I'm like, where is this guy coming from? Every salesperson believes in their product for the most part. I mean, let's be real. Your belief in the product has nothing to do with your prospect believing in the product. Just because you believe something doesn't mean that they're going to believe something. Think about politics. Let's say you're a Democrat. Just because you're a Democrat doesn't mean that the Republicans are just going to believe in it because you believe in it. It's the biggest waste of nonsense I've ever heard of. And so many sales trainers teach that, and salespeople think that they just have to believe in the product and work hard, and they're going to make lots of sales, and nothing could be further from the truth. Of course, you got to believe in the product. That's a given. Of course, you got to work. But it's your skill level. It's learning the right things to say. More importantly, ask what questions you're asking that causes that person to bring out their emotions and to trigger them to want to solve the problems they've just told you and themselves they've had. Johnny, that was a great call. I'm so glad I had the time to be on here. Any last words of advice for our listeners real quick before we end the show?
Yeah. If you're not already investing in yourself to be better at your job, you're selling yourself short, and you're selling your family short. You're selling the people short that are going to depend on you, to provide income. So take this time, take this opportunity now to really take a hard look at what you're doing and if it's effective. Mm-hmm. And if it's not, really reevaluate how you got there and, what could possibly help you get to the place that you really want to get to. I mean, I'm a little bit biased that NEPQ is the best thing around because it's certainly helped change my career, but you can look at all the results of all the people that have really bought into this. I mean, it's not just going to do it for you. You have to do it. You have to buy in, but people who have bought into this and really done it, I mean, a lot of us have become very, very successful people.
Yeah, I know I think before the training, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were making maybe 80 to 100,000 a year.
Yeah. And I thought I was doing great, right? I'm like, oh yeah, and then a couple years later, you're making 10 times that amount of money.
You made 1.3. I have to tell about $1.3 million, 1099 rep the last year. That is insane, my friend.
Yeah. It's changed my life. It's changed the way that I look at a lot of things and the way that I can approach things because I have a bit more freedom to do things I didn't think were possible, or I thought were going to take a lot longer to get there. I think that's really one of the most important things to talk about here is I did this in rapid time. I mean, I have people in the industry that have 30 years in that have not reached where I've reached, and I've done it in 3.5.
Yeah.
And
I tell people there, not just because you're a cool looking dude, but because of your skill level.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with anything but the conversations I'm having with my clients. A lot of conversations are via email, via phone. It's not in-person stuff. It's not a lot of dinners because my industry is heavily regulated. I can't gift people things, right? So I have to have very concise communication with people. And the ability to commit business in 1 to 4 meetings versus 10 to 15 to 20 attempts. It gets you there so much faster. I mean, that's the real key to this. You're doing it quicker.
Yeah, because the questions you're asking that you've learned, NEPQ, is triggering certain things in that doctor's brain or whoever you're selling to that's causing them to create urgency on the problems you've helped them discover by the questions you asked. So because they sense that urgency, they're ready to go after 1 or 2 or 3 appointments rather than most complex sales might be 15 or 20. So you're taking your sales cycle down from maybe 8 months to down to maybe a month or 2. It's completely changes the ballgame. 100%.
Yeah, the only thing that holds us up sometimes are contract negotiations with large entity systems, right? Hospital systems, like the big groups, and every area has got different entities that are there that are the big systems. That's what really holds us up. But one of the key things in that is we generally tend to get such a high level of emotional buy-in from our clients that those long contracting processes with the hospital a lot of times is where people really lose a lot of opportunity in my industry, because the doctors get tired of, quote, being the champion and fighting for this new product to come in. Right. Our surgeons stick through it the whole time. Right. Because they're bought in. And the reason why they're bought in is because they persuaded themselves. Yep. I didn't persuade them by trying to rub my enthusiasm off on them or rub my emotional belief in this product off on them. They've decided in their own mind that this is the right step for me to take. And when people make that decision, it's very, very powerful and very hard for them to then sway off of that course.
You're right. Your questioning ability causes that prospect to persuade themselves. So you're right. They're not going anywhere. Johnny, you're the man. That was a great interview. It's going to help a lot of people listening to the show. Thank you for being on. That's a wrap for us. Closers or losers. Remember, if you're still using closing techniques, old school manipulative closing techniques, you are losing sales in this day and age, 2020. Johnny, thanks for being on here. Look forward to seeing you at other events and having you back on the podcast again. Keep crushing it.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. I really appreciate it. Good luck with everything, man.
Now, if you're serious about joining the top 1%, I mean the top 1%, and you want to experience more training content just like this, click the links right over there. Right over there, they're exactly what you need to see next. You see, I release new episodes featuring top salespeople and sales authorities, multiple 6-figure, high 6-figure, even 7-figure earners. And if you're new here, do yourself a favor and smash that subscribe button right below, and join our new Facebook group, Sales Revolution. You see, it's free, and there's a link in the description below just for you. We put it there for you. Finally, I make posts on Facebook and Instagram each and every day with more tips and training, so be sure and follow me and turn on your notifications. So make a comment in the first 7 minutes to any of my latest posts, share this episode, and there's a very real chance that you're going to win some killer prizes. And here's the thing, don't sit on the sidelines. Don't be like everyone else. Get into the game. Join the sales revolution. Stay active, get involved, learn the right skills, and we will show you how to take your life and income to a level that most only dream about.